Thank you, Dr. Hiba, for telling us about all the exciting, projects that are coming up for the professors and instructors and UDSD. Honestly, I sit on this committee and I see the vision and the passion that Dr. Hiba has for our own, well-being as professors and instructors. So thank you so much, Dr. Hiba, for your comments. Now, our morning session begins with a captivating panel discussion on MOOCs courses titled Charting the MOOC Landscape, Insights from Educational Pioneers, to be moderated by Dr. Hiba Sabri. Joining us today are esteemed panelists, Associate Professor KC from National University of Singapore, Associate Professor Associate Professor Farrah Yusop from University of Malaya, Mr. Pedro Moura, Coursera Partnerships Director overseeing campus collaborations in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. I would like to invite all our panelists and Dr. Hiba to please come on stage. Please allow me to read our esteemed panelists' short bios while they make their way to the stage. KC serves concurrently as Director, Center for English Language Communication and Master Helix House at the National University of Singapore. While her main interests are in the use of technology in language teaching and learning and assessment, she also has a keen interest in the impact of experiential learning and living learning programs. Casey had the experience of developing MOOCs on Coursera, edX, and similar internal university platforms. Her publications range from language teaching, communication to academic development, and living learning programs. Dr. Farrah Yusop is an associate professor in the Faculty of Education at the Universiti Malaya. She earned her PhD in curriculum and instructional technology and human-computer interaction from Iowa State University, USA. She was the former director of ADAC, the University Center for Managing Professional Development Programs for its academics, as well as superheading various e-learning initiatives, including MOOCs and micro-credentials. Pedro Moura is a partnership director overseeing Coursera for campus collaborations in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, with an extensive background spanning from over 18 years in the education sector. He brings a wealth of experience in fostering international partnerships within higher education and governmental spheres. Pedro spent more than 12 years in English education language teaching, publishing industry, where he played a pivotal role in leading educational, digital, and international partnership initiatives across the world. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you for all our esteemed panelists for coming today. Dr. Hiba.
Mic. No, I have a mic. Okay, now it's working. Pedro, Dr. Farrah, and Dr. KC, thank you so much for being here. The mics work, yeah? Okay, so I'd like to kick off today's panel discussion on a question about MOOCs. I don't want to say MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Courses. I need a definition of what it means from a pedagogical sense, and why are so many higher education institutions are using it as a source for teaching and learning. What's so unique about MOOCs? Pedro.
Shall I start?
It's not working.
Oh, I think it's working now. Can you hear me over there? Okay. Perfect. Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to Dr. Hiba for the invitation to extend that to the leadership of the university. It's a pleasure to be here. So I guess it's, let me just perhaps start going back a little bit to the impact we've seen during the pandemic, because I believe that was a point when things changed massively. I remember very well that at the height of the pandemic, universities in general had to close. and they didn't have much of an idea on how to proceed with teaching and learning processes. Like, students were locked either in residence halls or at home, and a bit desperate because they wanted to continue their learning process, but couldn't. And universities, at that time, obviously they did have access to features, to platforms, but I think that what was lacking was a robust e-learning strategy. And I recall very well that we at Coursera, we kind of like decided to engage at that point in time with all universities in the world and make the platform available to any university that was affected by COVID. So that gave us a really, really good insight on, first of all, what teachers and students could do when the capability of learning was very constrained. And we also decided that at that point in time, we wanted to inaugurate a department in Coursera that would provide skills consultation to these universities. So we got a lot of data from the engagement of, I would say, probably 9,000 universities all over the world. But after COVID and things getting back a bit more to the normal times, the idea of hybrid learning was there. It was a moment in time when there was no way back. Institutions in general saw a big advantage in terms of providing flexibility of learning, boosting, I would say, independence as well, giving students the opportunity to deep dive into, say, content that they could have access anytime, and making the learning process a lot more dynamic. Now, if you try to put this into perspective, I guess that the fact that, for example, from our side, we're working with different types of institutions, not only universities, but corporations, governments, it does create an ecosystem that kind of like, let's say, contribute, they feed each other. These institutions are preparing learners that are coming to the job market. And from there, obviously, what you see is the expectation of corporations and having the right skills. So this is the pressure that I feel that universities are having now, to make sure that they can give the right skills for learners that are about to get to the job market. And I think that this is, it gives a bit of a sense of what is the direction we want to take.
Yeah, absolutely. I think post-COVID, universities had a reality check that, relying on Teams and Zoom as tools for hybrid learning or online education is not enough, because these tools were not built for teaching. These are only online meeting tools. What about you, Dr. Farrah? What can you add to this?
First of all, thank you so much to UDST for inviting me. It's an honor to be here and also to be in Qatar, and I love this country the moment I came out from the airport. So I can speak from maybe 3 roles or 3 perspectives. I was first tasked as the former director of the ADEC, Academic Development Center at the university, to start or kick off the MOOC and micro-credentials program, and also e-learning back in 2019. So we started in 2016 with blended learning, and then we transitioned to MOOC in 2019, and during the pandemic, 2020, it became micro-credentials. So now we have added another initiative, which we call ODL, Open Distance Learning Programs. So all of these projects are right now simultaneously going on. So talking about MOOC, we began to have international branding first. Okay, it began with when I first talked, my first task was to introduce my university to the whole world. So my university, Universiti Malaya in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, is listed in the top 100 universities in the university ranking. We are in the 60 to 70, it's ups and downs sometimes, but it depends on in the year we were evaluated. So, however, we are not really being recognized internationally. So we are very known in the Asian region, but we wanted to go out. We wanted to go to the European countries as well as in the Middle East as well. So my task is to create this MOOC, meaning that bringing out what we already have in the university and put it to the whole world. So because of that MOOC project, from my experience, alhamdulillah, we have attracted many students internationally and also collaboration from many, many different countries. So that was the first task. But then I'm also a lecturer and also a course developer. So I went through the process of designing and developing, offering and teaching through the MOOC platform as well. So I known all the challenges and also the benefits out of it. So the good thing about MOOC is that I got to know a lot of students beyond my universities. And most of them are from the Western countries, which is interesting. I got emails from students asking about the content of my course, which I put in the MOOC. We use FutureLearn as the platform. Okay. So I got emails to invite me for collaboration in research, in publication, many joint venture projects, you can say, as an academic. So MOOC has brought something positive for me personally as well. So I've seen that MOOC and micro-credential is a good project that the university is heading, and I'm glad that UDST also is heading the same way. Maybe we can do collaboration later.
Sure.
Hi, good morning. I echo my panelists' thank you to the university for inviting us here. So I'm coming from the perspective of, maybe I'll just add on from the perspective of these. I see that there are 5 brave souls here who will pilot the Coursera courses. I was initially in 2013, 2012, 2013, when we started with also Coursera, to mount a Coursera course. And that, I'll come from that perspective, and to say that at our university, why we did Coursera at that time, our understanding was that to make available to many, many more students or students beyond the university content, and hopefully I'm saying this in a humble manner, good teaching practices, good learning for other people who are beyond my classes or beyond colleagues who are in the initial slate of pilot programs, for them to be able to also experience these courses, this content from our perspective. So that was, I think, from the university's initial approach, that was to basically enable all this to a more enlarged audience out there that is beyond our own classrooms. So that was something that I thought I'll just add on to your question here.
Thank you, Dr. Casey. I hear availability, making the courses available for a larger audience or students, and I also hear having a name for the university in the marketplace. But what about teaching and learning, Dr. Casey? I know you taught in a traditional face-to-face class, and you also taught a course on MOOCs. So was there a change for you? And also, did you have to alter your teaching style when it comes to teaching on MOOCs?
Dr. Hiba had a session with us and sort of kind of mentioned to us some of the questions that she may raise. I thought about it, and I have a long list. But the long list is actually, to me at that time, was exciting, it was challenging. There is a change. And I'm thinking, reflecting on this, there are a few things that I would like to just share, and I think maybe later on my colleague Farrah, Dr. Farrah, will be able to expand on that. The considerations or the assumptions that we have as instructors, as university lecturers here. The first thing is, I was very used to teaching face-to-face. I was very used to teaching synchronously. Now the mind has to shift. My mind has to shift a little bit. How do I approach this teaching and student learning from the perspective that it is asynchronous? It is no longer going to be synchronous. If it is synchronous, I can see you, I can face to face, I can see you, I can see your nonverbal cues. I can pick up from that, I can change accordingly. But on this platform, I need to think a little bit more and think to myself, it is asynchronous. I can't see my students can't see me instantaneously. How do I then change the way that I deliver? How do I then change the way that I teach my students so that the learning outcomes hopefully remain the same for my students? So that's my first point. My second point is that we also need to consider learner behaviors. Learner behaviors online and learner behaviors in our classrooms are different. So that's the second assumptions that I need to look at and I need to think deeply about it. The third thing is, I think to me, it's very important if you want to incorporate that into our synchronous face-to-face classes, which is to prepare our learners. How the learner readiness is one other point that I felt that when I had it, as we call it in our institution, blended learning approach, when I incorporated that into my classroom, I had to prepare. I had to spend some time not only to prepare myself, but also prepare my learners to go into this blended mode of learning. So if you think about this, where Dr. Hiba earlier asked a question of what is the learning principle that anchors this MOOC? I think one of the key things is that it's about self-independent learning, right? It's about giving the students autonomy. It's that concept that sort of anchors or this is premise upon. I think if you look at it in a deeper sense, that learner readiness is important, is critical to me. How ready are our learners to go into this mode of autonomous learning or self-independent learning? How much do we need to prepare them for this particular landscape? And it's from, I'll just stop after this. I've got a few more points, but I'll just stop after this. It's preparing them from pretty much structured. They come to the classroom and they have a syllabus. They have lesson, like, week after week planned for them. But when they go onto this MOOC platform, it is for them to choose whichever content and in however structure or sequence that they want to go into. It is from that structure to a sort of unstructured way of learning, although in the MOOC platform is pretty structured, but it's that kind of change in the paradigm shift for them as learners, as well as for me and for, colleagues here as instructors. So I thought I better stop.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was well explained. Just to explain synchronous, what Dr. KC meant, synchronous is live. Live learning in the classroom, asynchronous is self-directed, just to clarify that point. And I can't resist but to ask you, Dr. KC, because you mentioned that we need to prepare them. We need to prepare students for this type of learning. Yes, we do, but also looking at Coursera and the structure there, it's very organized. In a way, the learning is self-paced, but there is some sort of an organized type of learning that is, because we can't just, have them go into the platform and it's, they can choose whatever. There is also some sort of a controlled approach, a little bit. But yeah, it's it's self-directed, but in an organized way. I think you want to add something to.
I think you're absolutely right, and I really like what Dr. Casey said in terms of I would say the personalization of the learning process, because I've been traveling the world and speaking to professors, trying to understand a bit more, how they feel this whole transition towards, let's say, more independence of learning. And I guess that the the outcome, I mean, the conclusion of these conversations is that from one side, obviously there is a vast amount of resources out there that would provide students with unlimited options. But as you said yourself, Dr. Hibbert, there has to be some level of guidance.
Yes.
Especially when we understand very well that when it comes to, for example, more localization of learning, we need to align learning, for instance, with national initiatives. I'm very acquainted with the visions, for example, that you have here in Qatar and in the other countries in the GCC. So how to, let's say, balance between more independent learning, but also specific recommendations that will help the country achieve its goals. So I think that this is the work that we're trying to do by taking, obviously, a big help with data analysis. So for instance, every year we publish a report we call the Global Skills Report, which kind of like gives a photography of the state of skills across the world that is kind of like international but localized and giving a specific attention to 3 pillars: business, data science, and technology. And the reason why these 3 pillars were selected is because most of the jobs that are created today are actually within these areas. Obviously, there are several subdomains within these 3 pillars, but that kind of like links up a lot with the idea of micro-credentials. So why micro-credentials? What's actually within this specific learning pathway? It's mainly because, and I will quote another report that we have actually conducted recently, more and more the expectation that companies have of graduates is, let's say, connected to emerging skills that were either taught incompletely, partially by universities, or not at all. And the reason is because these are skills that have come up in, let's say, last 5-6 years, or sometimes are actually, I would say, developed by an industry partner that has full domination over it. So I'm talking about, the industry leaders like Google, Meta, IBM, Microsoft. So they themselves create these professional certificates for their employees with the intent of giving them full and, let's say, pathway to, let's say, conduct their work successfully. And this is now cascaded to universities. So the report I was talking about showcases that there is more expectation from companies that graduates that start, let's say, their first jobs have those skills. And there is a big pressure on universities, consequently, to deliver those skills. And I think this is in a way interesting because you can see the link in the ecosystem. So for example, here in Qatar, for instance, we work with the likes of Ooredoo, and they have a framework of what they expect of employees. And we try to, let's say, look at that framework and inform universities that are, for instance, preparing students for jobs, not only at Ooredoo, but other organizations as well. But that gives an idea of what is actually the learning pathway they need, what are the skills that they need to tick the box. But I think it goes a little bit beyond, there is this side which is very much directed to the job market, which is important. But there is another side of it, which I honestly appreciate very well, because it deals with the fact that interdisciplinarity is becoming more important than ever. So the other day I was reading a very interesting article in the Financial Times about the rate of success in the job market from students that do have, let's say, double degrees, degrees in slightly different areas. So a combination of, say, humanities and tech. These people tend to succeed a lot more. They have a very, very broad perspective of the world. And I think that this is another thing we're trying to instill, especially when you think about areas such as soft skills, human skills. We in Coursera tend to look at projects we're implementing with universities as a combination skills that are related to vocation side, but also skills that are opening learners to a more collaborational side. You know, I would say that this would be an important message to share when we engage with an institution like, you know, UDST. Okay.
Speaking of micro-credentials and skills-oriented training and human skills training, we know that Coursera follows a micro-credential approach in terms of modularity and stackability. But also we hear about micro-learning. So micro-credentials and micro-learning are used interchangeably. So how can we make the distinction between the two terms?
So I would say that when it comes to the micro-credentials, ideally what you see is that there is a move more and more of collaboration partnerships with bodies of accreditation. So for example, we initiated work with the American Council of Education, ACE, to accredit the professional certificates and micro-credentials that we are, offering, which is a very important, let's say, aspect of the work when you consider that some learners that are taking these micro-credentials and want to later on get into a college, they could get recognized, so they would be accredited towards the college degree that they are taking. So I would say that this would be the, let's say, the big goal when you think about providing learning processes in a large scale. We did this with the ACE. We are working with FIBA in Europe. In the UAE, we are working with the CAA, the Commission for Accreditation for the country, and we are in conversations with other bodies in different governments as well. So this obviously talks about the move in terms of the micro-credentials. I think that the other side of the story is obviously that, you know, some of these are implemented across universities in a more modular way, as you said, in terms of like full credit approach. And I guess that this has to align with the attributes that the university is focusing on. So what we tend to do is to look into things such as strategic plans that universities have, like they have specific goals that they want to achieve. And instead of like imposing Coursera curriculum, what we are looking at is including modules that can bridge skills gaps. So as I've mentioned before, we have a team of solution consultants that will be, you know, analyzing skills, comparing those with the reports that we're publishing, and pointing out potential skills gaps that could be bridged with specific content. Sometimes this content is not going to be a full course. Sometimes we're talking about modules. And this goes back to the personal, let's say, aspect of the thing. Now, I would say that this is going to be super accelerated now with the advent of Gen AI. It is a topic that I have been discussing in many, many panels. So last week I was in the HCI in Saudi, which was completely focused on Gen AI practices. And I guess that, you know, this is obviously a big breakthrough now that I would see is going to be cascaded into the work that we're doing with, you know, the likes of UDST. So how we can accelerate the process of indicating modules that, or parts of courses that could be aggregated to the content that you are preparing and delivering both internally and externally. I heard Dr. Rashid saying something about UNDP, which, you know, another organization we work with. So again, you know, we're talking about teaching in massive scale, and that requires more customization as well. So that would be my...
Yeah, just to elaborate as well, micro-learning is a teaching strategy that could also be used in the classroom. I mean, chunking down the learning into smaller pieces would definitely be more engaging for students. Dr. Farrah, I would like to ask you, I mean, with all these innovations, with MOOCs, micro-credentials, and even more technologies coming our way to incorporate in the classroom, now the instructors might ask, what's in it for me as an instructor? You know, and they would also question their role in this new educational technology / distance education era. So what can we say to instructors whom they are worrying about their role that might be changed in this, under this new innovative teaching approaches? What can we say to them?
Thank you for the question. So I'll be speaking as a MOOC developer myself and also a MOOC instructor. When I was first time asked to create a MOOC and deliver it, of course, I was so overwhelmed and nervous. I have all these questions that you ask me. I have all these worries. But in the beginning, if I can be honest, Dr. Hiba, in the beginning, we and myself, we are not so sure whether we are doing it correctly. We are so focused on, is this should be the way I do it? Is this wrong? So after a while, after creating the content, I then realized that each instructor have their own specialties, they have their own expertise, and their own way of delivering their information. Mm-hmm. So we began with having a template. The edX center that I led, we have a template for instructor where we do the micro learning approach. So we help them to break down the topic into subtopics and then to modules or submodules, okay, the smallest unit of instruction. So when we start with the template, we then can help them going to the second phase, which is to start developing learning objectives and also learning materials for each of the sub-content, okay, or subtopic or submodule. So developing the content is not difficult as an instructor because we are experts in our field, right? So we are fine. But the challenge is to make it more structured. So I have to tell you, maybe our mode is quite different from your mode. Our mode for MOOC is XMOOC, not CMOOC. Okay, so what is XMOOC? XMOOC is non-interactive, no interaction synchronously with the learners. Okay, so everything are pre-recorded videos, as well as we have some text to explain it. We use graphics and a lot of multimedia elements. So we do not have any direct interactions, right? We don't have like, doing it in Zoom way, for example. So everything must be prepared first before we can offer the course. So that's our XMOOC version. On contrary, CMOOC is where you have the connectivism with the learners, and we don't go that way. So because our approach is XMOOC, so we ask our instructors to have a script for their video. This is new. This is new for us because going to lecture hall and then deliver your lecture candidly, spontaneously is easy, right? And as Dr. Casey said, we are used to talking to people. But when you develop MOOC materials, you talk to computer screens and you have a backdrop, green screen at your back. Sometimes we record this session in lab. We have a jungle. So anything related to forestry, we are going to that nature environment. If it is like, for example, in pharmacy faculty, we go to their lab to document everything. So we can't just candidly record the sessions. It has to be scripted. So I have to teach the instructors how to create scripts. It has to start with, hi, today we are going to learn, so they have to talk about the instructional objectives. And then we start to build one by one, pieces by pieces, or we call it the learning objects, which could be in the form of videos and so on. So that's new for us, okay? And as an instructor, that's all we need to know. So the good thing in Universiti Malaya is that there is a dedicated team. We call them production team. So the production team help us with editing the videos and create original graphics. Okay, this is another thing that I wanted to share as well. So when we offer MOOC, as much as possible, try to make the content original. We don't want to be, messing around with the copyright or patented issues, right? So we want our instructors to create their own video as well as the graphics. So if we need graphic for specific course, let's say you are teaching in medical sciences, anatomy of the human organs, for example, we have graphic designer to draw that. Okay, we don't just take from the internet or from the videos. This is for us to do to protect ourselves from the issues with copyright and patent. So the production team is very good. They do the editing, they do the recreate the materials for us. And on the third phase, we are going together with the production team, and together we upload it online to the platform.
I just want to tell our instructors to relax. The AL department will help you with the design. You're not going to be learning how to work in a studio. But this is just an example of how, the MOOCs courses were implemented at the University of Malaya.
My apologies.
No, it's a good example.
I'm sorry, I don't want to scare you. But we use different ways, actually. So in the first, we let the instructors to create their own materials.
Sure.
Okay, but because we want it to be we want to offer more, so we have the specific team to help us with that. And another model that we use in our university is that we give grants, teaching grant, to the instructors who are interested with MOOC, so they can hire a research assistant to help us also. So that is something that changing. But I want to also to say that after offering the course, when it's online, I feel proud of myself. Like I'm one of the instructors in the whole world who are brave enough to took the initiative to present my course in the world. And as I mentioned just now, I got a lot of emails and also requests for collaboration. So that's a good thing.
Sure.
You are out there in the whole world looking at you as well.
Sure. Dr. Casey, I'd like to hear from you on the instructor's role under all these innovative...
Yeah, I thought that I wanted to say a little bit about coming back to your question. With technologies, I've been teaching for many years. Technologies come and go. With every technology that's introduced, I would like to see that the Gen AI is another technology that's at this point in time, but in 20 years' time, maybe another technology takes over. What is our role as an instructor? To me, fundamentally, my role is basically to help my students make connections, make sense of their learning. My role also, I feel, is to challenge them, to help them to probe further and deeper into their understanding of particular content. My role is also to help them to be able to express, to be able to articulate their thoughts after learning from different platforms and so on and so forth. After all, coming to a higher institution is to engage with different minds, to dialogue with different individuals. I think that those roles can't be taken by MOOCs, can't be taken by certain technologies that come our way. So yes, maybe Gen AI, I teach language. Now Gen AI can do all the very nice grammar and everything. Students can write beautiful essays for me to grade. Yeah. So what do I do, What do I look at? So these are the things that we are thinking about now. It doesn't take away the fundamental values of why we are here as educators. So reflecting on that, I think my role is then thinking about, yes, these have come along. And so what else can I, with this as that they have already, what value do we add on to our students to further help them, as I said earlier, 3 things to me, to make sense, to probe further, to challenge them, as well as to help them to articulate and to engage with other people, the content, the knowledge, the learning that they have acquired. So that's my
Thank you,
response
Dr.
to the
Casey.
instructor's role.
Thank you, Dr. Casey. I'd like to turn it over to the audience just to engage you with, if you have any questions for our panel members. Come on, there must be a question. Yeah, we have.
Thank you and good morning. Vahi Kayan, Associate Professor, College of Business in Healthcare Management. Thank you for the panel and your comments. I'm very interested in micro-credentials and MOOC. Actually, I was introduced to these concepts, platforms several years ago. One question that I have about micro-credentials, could students apply micro-credentials towards a degree, undergraduate or master's?
I can definitely answer that, and the answer is yes. There are cases of universities we're working with where micro-credentials have been applied to curriculum. So this, again, is very much a drive that comes from the necessity imposed by the job market. And I would actually go beyond that. I have actually seen K-12 institutions applying parts of micro-credentials at the last years of the learning process. So this is something that they are already scaling towards learners before they get to university. So this is again a trend that I have seen and especially I would say here in the GCC and in the Middle East as well.
Okay, thank you. And one comment, if I may, and Dr. Casey's comment about synchronous versus asynchronous. During COVID, I was teaching in another university, and actually we had to change our syllabi to include both synchronous and asynchronous activities, and so that it was blended and it had helped with the teaching. Thank you.
We have someone in the back, yes.
I just wanted to ask, I think these are great initiatives, but I find that sometimes, they're not, online accreditation or online degrees are not necessarily accepted. Do you think that that's something that the university will be able to influence, for example, certain institutions to accept these online credentials? Because that always seems to be an issue when it's a hybrid model or anything like that. In some universities or in some countries, it is recognized. That's why today we're going to be hearing from the Ministry of Education and Higher Education in Qatar to see or understand their policy on distance education. I know there is changes that is happening, but we need to know what these changes are in case we implement. We are actually implementing, but to make sure that our hybrid learning policy and distance education policy is consistent with what the ministry is going to have in place. I've got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to ask regarding MOOC, as in the different platforms like Moodle and other, online learning platforms. How is it different than what we are currently using, like D2L, or there are many other learning platforms? So if there is no difference, why MOOC now?
There is a big difference. We're using a learning management system. We load our courses on the learning management system. We design our PowerPoint slides. I guess that's what we're mostly doing and loading on the platform. With MOOCs, we have access to thousands of courses, thousands of guided projects, modules, videos, assessments, and I will give the floor to Pedro to explain more the difference between an LMS and Coursera.
Yeah. So the typical LMS is a space where it's a repository of content that you will be able to fill with, let's say, resources of your own making. You can, let's say, shoot a video, you can create a handout, you can add, there are obviously different capabilities depending on the LMSs that you work, either Blackboard or Moodle or Canvas. They actually do integrate with the platform that we work with, Coursera. Dr. Haber said pretty much it. What we do is to partner with both top universities and industry partners to provide content that is actually stakeable. We're not only providing courses, We also have a set of virtual labs, as we call them. These are very, very short resources that tend to focus on systems. So if someone is actually willing to learn how to use Tableau, like a data visualization, or say, get expertise in Excel or Salesforce. So the guided projects will give you access to these systems through the platform, and then you can actually complete them in less than 2 hours. So in that case, you're not just acquiring a skill, but you're actually learning to manipulate that system for, engineers, tech, computer science college. That's actually very good because you're training them, let's say, large scale. But I would say the next step now in terms of this partnership is to allow, let's say, professors to combine the content that exists in the, say, platform with content that they create, but in a much more accelerated way. So I will extend a little bit on what Dr. Farrah was saying before in terms of the fear. I would say that one of the benefits of artificial intelligence is the acceleration of the process of selecting content that you can aggregate with. So say the mechanism where you can input information about the content you are interested at the level you want, and combining that with things that you have created is now out there. Whereas before, I would say probably 10 years ago, the costs of creating a course in terms of how time consuming, but also the costs of infrastructure, they would amount to over $100,000. And this would be even for a short course. Whereas right now, with a feature like Course Builder, which is completely powered by Gen AI, you can actually do that in a much more dynamic way. Now, I agree completely that this is not a replacement for faculty. I think that's just like any other tool out there. I would say that this is something that faculty will leverage, to ensure that the process of teaching and learning is more dynamic. But it's not something that I would say, we are here to replace. I think that the human contact. I myself am doing an MA right now that is actually presential, hybrid. But I feel that that contribution in local is extremely important. I think that this is irreplaceable.
Can I add a little bit of
Sure.
answering to the first question and second? I think in our university, we still use the learning management system. We call it Spectrum, which is from the Moodle platform. And at the same time, we also created MOOC courses, which is hosted in commercial platform, Future Learn for our university. So what happened is that we blend the courses in Coursera into our 14 weeks structured academic program. For example, in my course, I will ask the student in week 2 to go through my course in MOOC platform, and they can complete my modules there. And they will let me know that they have completed the quizzes there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the good thing is that this can be a flipped learning approach to my teaching course. So during that time, week 2, when my students are online, they learn on their own. But on week 3, when we meet again face to face, we will discuss about the quizzes that they took and also the content that they see in that. And another thing is that MOOC is also offered for external students, people who are not registered as students, right, in the university. They can now transfer credit, okay? Let's say they are not registered with the University of Malaya, but when they have a completed MOOC course, they can bring at least 1 credit hour to the 3 course hour as a student in university. So the transfer credit is nationally done in Malaysia. So it's a good thing to also attract students from overseas to your class.
Other questions?
Yes, we have a few minutes. Mr. Gerard?
Yeah, thank you. I've been listening very intently. It's a very interesting panel. My name is Gerard Dominic. I'm actually one of the people who will be building a MOOC for the College of Business. So my question is directed really to Dr. Farrah and to Dr. KC. So perhaps maybe you can give us an idea as to the time commitment that's required to develop a MOOC for a full course, and maybe some interesting insights on that first course that you both developed.
Wow, I like your question. It's very, very, you kind of nail it. and that's where maybe I'll just share my own experience. It took a long while for me to create that first MOOC, maybe because I wasn't used to it. But also I wanted to underscore what Dr. Farrah said, that video is really your face to, you know, so many learners out there. So I'm sure it will be professionally done, it will be guided. That took me quite a bit of time to not just script it, but basically, as I said earlier, how do I sustain my students' interest? Sometimes in different MOOCs or different courses that you see out there, it's the personality that sustain the interest and the attention of the students besides the learning. But for someone who may not look so exciting as I am, then I need to create something in it that the content needs to sustain my students' learning and all that. So it took me quite a while to kind of get it to the level that I'm kind of satisfied with. But after that, I think after that, there's still, of course, the quizzes and so on and so forth that one has to think about. How do I build in assessment and so on and so forth. But I think as the first group of, one of the first group of people who doing it here, I just want to say that after you've completed it, I think you'll feel very fulfilled, that it's a learning journey for me. Whether it's, you know, my students, my learners view it as, you know, great or not so great, but I feel that I have learned a lot in this journey, not just in putting up content on a MOOC platform, but also for my teaching in a face-to-face situation.
Thank you, Dr. KC. Just to clarify, Dominic, your course is hybrid. Dr. KC was referring to a fully self-directed online course. So the time of development for a fully online course is definitely much bigger than having a hybrid course on MOOCs.
We can take one more question because of time constraints. Yes?
So my name is Saifuddin. I'm from the College of Computing and IT. The focus of the panel, I felt, was on the course preparation and the course delivery, but few was talked about the assessment. And since we're talking about micro-credentials and they will be recognized and they will be transferred as credits, how do you tackle the challenge of the authenticity of the assessments done on these MOOCs?
I think this is an excellent question. So I guess that more and more there is a big preoccupation out there when it comes to academic integrity. You know, especially when you see universities implementing technology in, let's say, a full credit approach. So there are more and more mechanisms out there to curtail anything that goes against academic integrity. So for example, the idea of proctoring, identification of learners, and in the world of generative AI, where, as you know very well, with things such as ChatGPT, you can easily request an essay to be written. What we are trying to do is to more and more probe the process of thinking that the student had in order to deliver what she or he delivered. So for example, we are using AI mechanisms that will be interacting with the learner and demanding the learner through, say, prompted questions, depending on the answers that the students provide, on, let's say, how you came up with this assumption Can you explain in, say, a few sentences, like the logics of your reply? So we're using a criteria of 4 points that will assess. It's almost like a TA, it's like a teacher assistant that will assess the learner's input and compare that to the, let's say, to the test that was taken or the essay delivered, and report back to the professor. And here comes, the role of the professor to take the report, to compare and see if there are aspects of not that are, say, affecting the academic integrity of that learner. So we are trying to use those mechanisms to kind of like, again, deal with the idea of cheating, plagiarism. I would say that it's always impossible, to deal with this 100%. There are always people that will be able to bypass, but I guess that the mechanisms make it harder, and this is in a way good. What I think we also try to instill is the process of learning is so much more important, and that what they will acquire, that the certification is just a final product of it, but what they are getting out out of this idea of interacting with the system, getting skills, this is actually what's going to make the difference in their professional life.
Thanks so much for your answer. We'll take two. Well, because of eagerness, I will take two more questions, please, Professor.
Yeah, hello, this is Dr. Belkacem from CCIT College. I have a question about the, when we open the MOOCs online for students, so we will have students with different levels, right? And on campus, when we teach, we can identify the students that need more help. Okay, how this will be accommodated in asynchronous, fully remote MOOC? And the second question is more about the student with special needs. So do you have any things for students with special needs when we are in fully remote MOOCs?
So when it comes to different levels, we will see that Coursera, from our side, we try to actually organize that courses are classified within 3 levels. So this would already associate your course, whether your course is directed to a more elementary group or intermediate. This will be something that before you set up your course, you need to be aware of your audience. But there are mechanisms within the course that would also help, let's say, the audience to better understand it. One of which is obviously language. Now, your course can be automatically translated. Scripts will be translated by machine learning to allow people that do not speak that language to learn, okay? I think the other thing is once again, I'm gonna bring AI, the idea that if someone is taking your course and comes across a terminology that is unknown to that learner, the platform will provide a system that will craft specific answers based on the question. So let's say I'm taking a course on business negotiation, and I don't know what actually BATNA means. It's an acronym that I didn't come across. I can actually ask the coach that will craft a message based on the content of the course only, and will provide that with me. So this is going to, again, allow me to continue the learning process, okay? Disabilities, we're working with a few features, especially for people that they're visually impaired. I think that the idea of increasing fonts, but we have a team that is actually integrating new elements that would allow also, especially when it comes to the hearing side. I think we still have to cover a lot, but there are some projects in the pipeline in that sense.
Thank you, Mr. Pedro. Please, Dr. Roni.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really would like to thank the panelists for their valuable insights. I'll kind of ask a question which may be on the mind of many of our colleagues, which is we are an applied university, and we are very proud of getting our students the right hands-on experience. I kind of know the answer to this, but I would like you to elaborate more. How would MOOCs help with courses that require the hands-on experience? Thank you.
Very good question.
I can share some experience that we have in University Malaya. We do have courses in Faculty of Medicine, Pharmacy, Engineering. Those requires lab, okay? So we use videos and make it very interactive to show the process. For example, there is one course about how to create a drug for Faculty of Pharmacy students. So we will create the animations from the start until the end, the process of creating the drugs. And secondly, we also through the videos, so we will record the process as well, and then capture the lectures delivered by the lecturer of the course. So the good thing about online education is that we can use multiple elements together. You can combine text, videos, animations, multimedia, all in one course. So these are very good for them. But still, if, like for example, a surgeon, students who want to be a surgeon, they can't just rely on this, okay? So it is supplemented with the instruction face-to-face, right? So they use the videos as a supplemental element to learn in class later, and this is called the flipped learning approach.
I'd like to add, Dr. Aouni, when I first met with Pedro, that was the first question. I said, we are an applied and experiential learning university. Yes, we want to jump on the wave of MOOCs, but please explain to us how can we apply AEL into our curriculum? And he mentioned guided projects. So I leave that to him to explain what that means.
Yes,
quickly.
so it's a very good point. So there are resources within our platform. They're called guided projects. They're virtual labs. They were an acquisition of Coursera back in 2019, and this is a very interesting type of resource because it gives access to, a very large number of systems without learners having to, say, install them. So secondly, so first of all, they are hands-on because they're virtual labs, and you have to manipulate. You have to create a portfolio of, say, a material in order to fulfill the guided project. But secondly, they're also, say, available for students and professors to create their own projects, which is a great way to encourage knowledge sharing between all members of the institution. So we have been working with universities that would require learners at the end of their years to create a project to demonstrate what they learned, and professors who are interested in creating more local or personalized projects, they can create, because they are not as long as courses or conceptual as courses are, they tend to be a much quicker type of resource to be set up. I would say that they tend also to be the first type of resource professors tend to tackle when they want to create a MOOC, because they give a nice idea of the steps towards content development.
Thank you so much for the panelists, for their insightful words. 4 learning points from my side. You reminded me that I need to be, as an academic, to challenge my learners, to connect with them with the notions, to grow them in knowledge. And basically, we're not only academics now to learners inside of UDSD, the 7,500 students. Now we're going to become, instructors to the world, which is very exciting. And, professors will receive a lot of support in developing these MOOCs. Other than the jungle, I don't think we're going to find a jungle in Qatar, but hopefully we want to develop these in the future. So let's take a short coffee break. Now it's 10:23. I would like to invite you to come back at 10:45. Please enjoy the refreshments and the coffee outside. Thank you. Oh, yes, I forgot to request Dr. Salam and Dr. Rashid for pictures with our panelists and on stage. Thank you.